But I want to first say I really believe in what Midcoast Humane Society is doing. Ed, Jane, Jess, they're doing an amazing job. I met a lot of the other people. I'm horrible with names, so I apologize for that. But I want, this is maybe a little controversial speech. I'm going to do a 40-minute talk up in Canada at their national conference, and the title is Not Seeing the Forest for the Trees, No Kill Doesn't Work. And some people may not like that. But in the end, what I'll tell you is that we are failing our companion animals, we're failing our shelter staff in particular, and we're failing our communities. And it's all due to a bureaucratic consortium of greed. I want to build a better future for companion animals. And what I'll tell you is that no kill doesn't work, and then the reasons why it doesn't work. In one sense, it's been the worst thing, in my opinion, that's ever happened to animal welfare, and it's been transported around the world, and it's really backed hoarders and collectors in many different ways. It depends on a forever crisis. I mean, our job is to put ourselves out of business, in one sense. Now, we're never going to be fully out of business, but we shouldn't have to be taking in strays. We shouldn't have to be taking in puppies and kittens because they were born. And I don't believe in euthanasia as a form of population control. Never have, never will. Spay and neuter is the answer for that. But the big groups, ASPCA, Best Friends, HSUS, Petco Foundation, PetSmart Charities, in 2022, if you add up their assets, it came to $1.3 billion. If you add in Alley Cat Allies, American Humane, Animal Welfare Institute, the Humane League, and North Shore Animal League, you're over $2 billion. All right, $2 billion. Why are we putting anything to sleep? Why are we transporting animals? The 2023 operation budget for the ASPCA is $356 million. It was $356 million. 2% of that went to grants. It used to be a much larger percentage. 2% went to grants, $7 million. $128 million went to salaries, and $38 million went to media promotion. They have really nice commercials. They really do pull on your heartstrings. But I'll tell you, back in 2015, 2016, private equity truly started buying veterinary hospitals. All right? Too close? Okay. Private equity started buying, that's why I'm good, because my wife. Veterinary hospitals, and about the same time, it wasn't coordinated, it was by sheer accident, that the humane organizations stopped funding spay-neuter. They really dropped back dramatically in their funding of spay-neuter. And then you come along a few years later and you have COVID that hits. All right, what we know during that time period, since then, veterinary prices have gone up some 300%, in many areas across this country. 300%. I don't remember getting a 300% raise ever, I hope some of you did, but I doubt it. Bob Christensen, who wrote the book Save Our Strays, he's with the Boca Fund. He did a report in 2021 that basically said 40% of Americans could afford current veterinary prices. 40%. That means 60% can't. We know who those 60% are. And I question 40% at this point. So it's a good resource, If you do surveys, and we've done lots of them, $2,500 seems to be the cutoff to where anything over that, we're probably gonna have to put our animals to sleep. That's called economic euthanasia. All right, 36% of pet owners, 55% said 2,500, 36 said 1,000 was the cutoff, 17% said there was no limit. They pretty much mortgaged their house if they had to. My wife's in that category. The no-kill philosophy with these big groups, and they have incredible power, incredible marketing ability, because they spend so much money, $38 million on advertising. That's just one group, But they have restricted intake, and I can talk about the 5 puppies that were dumped in Texas, and sure enough, they happened to have a camera, and they got a license plate, and they prosecuted the person for dropping those 5 puppies in the rural area. All right. No one, animal control, wouldn't pick the 5 puppies up. Well, the shelter is full. The shelter has to be being overseen by Best Friends, and this is what they do. If you would try to take those puppies to the shelter, they say, put them back. We don't have room for them, all right? And that's how they keep their live release rates so high, all right? Since that time, 1 was hit by a car, 1 just disappeared. They think it died. 3 of them are still there last time I was down there. it bothered me so much, we've taken care of them, we got them picked up. But it was really hard to do. And there's other animals running around in that same area. That's how they run their humane organizations. I don't see anything humane about that. And these were, when they were dumped, they were 2.5 months old. The time I got to them, they were 4.5 months old. So 3 of them had survived. They're a little skinny, a little wormy, but they survived. So they have restricted intake. They many times are overcrowded. They do transport schemes. And I understand, you know, you get online and you see something, there's a dog in Kentucky and you want it. No problem with that. That's not a transport scheme. But putting 50 puppies in the back of a van or something and taking them to Colorado and have outbreaks of distemper and parvo, we're seeing diseases spread in areas that never have had them simply because of these transport. I've seen animals on certain islands in the Caribbean where the whole organization is just about picking up puppies and sending them back. And I asked, well, do you spay and neuter? Well, we don't spay and neuter, and we don't have the money. We just send them to New York or wherever, you know. But they're not spay and neuter, don't offer spay and neuter. We just ship our puppies to the States. The other one said, we do spay and neuter. And well, it's an island, for God's sakes. You know, there can't be that many animals on it, you know. But they had a hard time getting full-time vets, but I spent a couple of days on my vacation doing spay and neuter because I really like doing that. So that was fun. And since then, I've hooked them up with several of my Mexican vets that go there on a regular basis, so they're making a big dent. But, you know, it's that mentality, and I do think money drives it, you know, because puppies and kittens sell, you know. That might be okay. We do a lot of street dogs in Mexico, but they have to be spayed or neutered. They have to be vaccinated. They can't be just left to run to get parvo, distemper, to be hit by cars and things like that, or poisoned or shot or whatever else happens to them. They have adoption campaigns. I always like to tell a story. A young couple went to Boulder, Colorado, very progressive humane society. They adopted a cat. It was an hour and a half down by bus, come back same way. They got off by our street, came into our facility, they adopted a cat. We decided on the way back, we don't really need a cat, would you take it from us? Now that's a live release rate, right? But they could have given it to me, they could have released it, they could have taken it to another organization, they could have done 101 things of that. So obviously what kind of screening was going on there, you know, for people to show up on a bus, take an animal away from there, and then give it up literally 2 hours later. Another example is just things being done. Manipulation of stats, it's amazing. Once again, they talk about live release rate. There's no such thing as no kill, okay? You consider no kill if you adopt 90% of your animals, but 10% you kill. That's called low kill, in my mind, not no kill, but that's the standard. And just for the record, in many areas of the country, because euthanasia rates are so high, they'll go down as low as 70%. As long as 70% of the animals are going out, we'll consider that a no-kill shelter. Well, who are they kidding? Tell that to the 30% that they killed or moved or whatever, you know? So it's not really the answer. We know that 60% of puppies, in several surveys, are given away within 1 calendar year. Think about that, 60%. Now, maybe they're taken back to a shelter, maybe to a different shelter, maybe they're given to a friend, but that's a really high number in all honesty. We also know that 65% of pet owners don't even get their animals from shelters. You know, they pick them up from friends or off Facebook or wherever. The future for me, my future has been going on for about 30 years now, so it still hasn't come. But I've been talking about economic euthanasia for years. You know, to have a good program, you have to also address economic euthanasia. Because in the end, I personally believe there's been one survey done, and we can guesstimate around 1 million animals are put to sleep based on one survey, I think it was from the AVMA. In any event, there's no accurate number. Every vet in America euthanizes animals on a regular basis because people can't afford that. Not because the animal can't be fixed. And that's one reason we have a very high suicide rate. It's one reason we have a very high dropout rate. But in the end, that has to be addressed, and I really believe humane societies, if you build it, they will come. You build a full service hospital, for the last 2 years, I've had vets from 10 different universities come through our training program in the last 2.5 years, and every one of them said, I don't want to work for corporate, but yet we know in major metropolitan areas, 70% of small animal practices are corporate now. Now they pay good, but every third animal you got to kill, and you can fix the animal, but you aren't given that choice. They don't have the money, send them out the door or euthanize them. I can fix that broken leg for $10,000, or I'll kill your animal for $500. Your choice. You know, that's not an option in my mind. What we know does work is targeted spay neuter, feral cat programs, you have to have it. We know in underserved areas, 77% of animals never see a vet, okay? 86% of animals are not fixed in underserved areas, as high as 86%. Dogs are 15 times more prolific than humans. Cats are 45 times prolific than humans. So we can't outbreed them, all right? And what happens is that's where you get the puppies and kitten transports all the time. And once again, it's like having a clogged sink, and the water's going full bore, and you're bailing out the sink instead of turning off the water. It's never gonna end. It just can't end, all right? It's a numbers game, and they win the numbers game every time. From 1990 to 2010, the shelter euthanasia rate in this country dropped 80 to 90% in most shelters. Think about that, from 1990 to 2010. Around that time, we were killing 20 to 24 million animals a year, dogs and cats a year. We're down, at some point, we're down to about 1 to 3, 2 to 4. Depends on who you read, and once again, they're not accurate numbers. But a 20 million drop's a 20 million drop. That's pretty significant. But what caused that? What was that about? That's because we had funding for spay neuter. We had the targeted programs, we had feral cat programs. We also need humane education. I personally believe you have to have the low-cost, full-service veterinary hospitals to prevent economic euthanasia. I think that's the future for sure. That's worth putting into. And you don't lose that much money. I mean, I've been in business 36 years. I've done low-cost work, high-volume work. I'm not a business. I have a $1.4 million facility. I have a CT scan. I have all kinds of stuff, and we have a very state-of-the-art equipment, and we pay very well. So it's doable. You don't have to be filthy rich to make that work. The number 50% of the animals given up in shelters are for behavior reasons. Okay, now think about that. 50% are given up for behavior reasons. About 80% aren't fixed. That's half your behavior problems right there. But ignoring that fact, how many shelters have a trainer or a behavior person on staff? Very few across America. So why not take a behavior problem, fix it, and get it back in the same family it came from? That makes sense to me. All right, that's not passing it down the line. That's dealing with a problem. So you should have a trainer or behaviorist on staff, and really do need better animal control regulation, especially in places like Texas, in Louisiana, Mississippi, and places like that. So maybe they're a little further behind. I really have a soft heart for single moms, veterans, people on fixed incomes. And I can tell you the story of a man who just sent me a letter from California who took his dog into an SPCA veterinary hospital, and he had 2 loose teeth. He said small teeth, I'm assuming they're incisors. $3,600 was the quote to do that dental, okay? He was a veteran, he was a wounded veteran, so he was a disabled veteran, all right? And he sends me this letter and said, I cannot do that. It's not possible, but I don't want my dog to suffer. I don't know what to do. Now we got him hooked up with someone in California because I have good connections in a lot of different states. But the point is, what would he have done? Would he have given it up? Would he felt bad and put it to sleep? I don't know. But how do we turn someone like that away in this country? What happened to us? Where did our humanity go? I don't understand that at all. I will tell you this. I do a lot of stats. I love reading stats. I love understanding why things are the way they are. If you want to learn more, educate yourself. I'm lucky to know Esther Meckler here tonight. She's one of the smartest people I ever met. She started Spay USA, Fixed by 5. She's with the United Spay Alliance. And she's done more to help animals, companion animals in this country than any 100 veterinarians has. So, kudos to her. Bob Christensen wrote the book Save Our Strays, several other books. He's with the Boca Fund, amazing individual. You have Ruth Steinberger with Spay First out of Oklahoma. We're working on a sterilization shot, and it's looking really good for dogs and cats. We hope to have it on the market. She has the patent on it. Can't use it on the open market. It won't be FDA approved, but it will be USDA approved. And it's going to cost $20 million to get it FDA approved. But we can use it for feral cats, and they said it's okay for feral cats, reservations, things like that. And we certainly, if we get it on the market, we'll take it to Mexico and we'll mass produce that stuff and have it all over the world in a blink of an eye. Ed Bach, Gene Altow started the Montana Spay Neuter Task Force, and we call it the Task Force Technique, which is mobile stuff. I've been doing stuff for years, reservations all over Montana. Gene passed away a few years ago, but the Montana Task Force goes on, and Task Force Technique, and it's all about getting in the communities involved, having children involved, education, and it really makes a difference. So that's, it's a good thing to look up. Ed Bach does animal politics. He's an incredible writer. I'm a horrible writer. He's an incredible writer, and he does his research. So it's a great blog to follow, Ed Bach, Animal Politics. Anything in the world about animals, Merritt Clifton with Animals 24/7. There's probably no one that knows more about animal issues around the world than Merritt Clifton. I can't say enough about him. If you want to know anything about cat behavior, cat protection out of the UK, they're the world's leader in cat behavior and stuff. Cat protection, I highly recommend them. Dogs Trust, they have a Dogs Trust USA now. They're going to give these big groups a run for the money, I think, over time. Dogs Trust has done a lot of work all over Europe, but now they're in the US, but they really understand dogs. Every one of their facilities, 22, 23 of them, they have, has a veterinary on board, has a trainer on board, you know. They train vets, they just do things right. Their systems are amazing, and even their temperature control is at the level of a dog, you know. So it's all about the dogs and their comfort. So there's some great resources out there. I'm going to try to get to the end of this by saying, in Europe we talk about the 5 freedoms in lectures. I say I've been in like 36 countries, and all over Europe they came up with the 5 freedoms. And these are things that you have to think about when you're doing humane type work. It's freedom from hunger, freedom from fear and distress. Large numbers of animals in cages is not free from fear and distress. Freedom from pain, injury, disease, freedom from discomfort, and freedom to express normal behavior. Those are all important. I've been in places in India where they had warehouses, and you open the door and there's 300 animals in there. All of them have broken legs or broken something, and it's dark, it's damp, and they won't put them to sleep because they don't believe in euthanasia. You know, and all animals are kind of stay away from each other. You can walk around them. Very few of them are together. You know, they're all in pain. I spent one day, I think I cut off 6 or 7 legs. I don't remember how many, you know, just to get them out of there to where they could, you know, have some quality of life. But that goes on all over, you know. And there's places, I've never been to a no-kill shelter in this country or any place else that, I was an animal control officer for 4 years, that I didn't feel I could prosecute or with neglect or cruelty. I've never been to one. I've been to best friends even back in the day. And I believe I could have prosecuted them at that time. You know, that's how I feel about it. So, only through humane education, real transparency, spay neuter, you know, targeted spay neuter is ideal, and retention rate. If I adopt an animal, it has to stay in your house. And if it doesn't, I need to know why it doesn't. That's called retention rate. These groups will not talk about retention rates because they just shove them out. What happens to them after that, they don't care. It should be about live retention rate, not live release rate. And I really do believe that. To change the future of companion animals in America and beyond, those are the things I feel like we have to do the most. And I really want to thank Midcoast Humane, and I really believe they're trying to do things the right way. So please, if you have a few extra dollars, send it their way. Thank you.